It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Coming to you from the studio, and then this is stars, planet X. The transition, try the best,
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, welcome everyone to the Best Damn Podcast. I am your host, John King. As always, I would like to thank you guys for joining me. Ask you to please add, follow, and check us out. Instagram, Facebook, Best Damn Podcast, Twitter, The Real Best Damn. And wherever you're watching this from, please make sure to hit the like, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and share this link. It helps new people to find us. And tonight we have got a pretty interesting one. We're going to be picking up from where we left off in the last live stream, basically looking at the end time prophecies, because, well, especially with today's time, we got weird shit like Comet 3i Atlas, which, more and more stuff keeps coming out about this. It's hyperbolic orbit. Right now it's still sitting behind the sun, making its closest approach December 19th. We know that there are many prophecies surrounding comets, asteroids, things of, an alien nature, the heavenly host, so if this thing is artificial or whether it's a comet or, anything above or below, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out. I think if we look around politically, I think it's pretty obvious that the world is in a very turbulent place, right? A lot of people like to say how interesting the times are, and I agree. We live in an incredibly interesting time, but it also can be a very confusing time because this is the age of deception, right? The Bible talks about sending a strong delusion, right, in these last days, and I feel like that's what we're experiencing. So tonight, we're going to be looking at some of the other kind of more obscure end time prophecies. We're going to be looking at the story of Ragnarok, which is the Norse mythology pertaining to the end of the world. We're also going to be looking at the book of Enoch tonight. And then we're going to get into some more kind of off the cuff stuff with, the Egyptian deity Kek. Because I believe, like, if you guys have ever seen the symbolism, and some of you may be familiar with the meme magic or, the Kek frog that is really connected, or portrayed by the right, and now we see it with the Groiper movement and all of this, right? But I don't know if a lot of people understand where, Kek, the Egyptian deity, and that this is a deity of darkness. So a lot of the reasons, you see in politics, especially, I believe that there is a spirit that inhabits everything within the world, right? And politics is no exception to the rule. So if you wonder why there's so much division, why there's so much discord, maybe tonight we can get to some of the bottom of that and see the demons that kind of, or the spirits that are behind some of these political movements. Also, we're going to be taking a look tonight at Project Bluebeam, mind control technologies. So it's probably going to be all over the place, but it should be a pretty interesting one. So let's go ahead and get the screen share going. All right. We're going to start off first with Ragnarok here. And I want to thank all of you guys for joining me. If you would like to get access to exclusive content, you can join me over on Patreon. It's patreon.com, Best Damn Podcast Official. You can also join the membership here on Rumble. Let's see what we got here. Right here. And I actually pulled this from a book here, so you guys see the Viking spirit, and this is the story of Ragnarok. We're going to start here first. This is one of the more interesting ones, and I feel like what a lot of people don't really, if you're not too familiar with, different, pagan belief systems, a lot of what you see in Christianity does have its roots in paganism, and you're going to see a lot of similarities. This is one thing that we've covered, or base story to it, right, or theme, right? Now we do see the difference with Christianity as Jesus and all of that, but you're still going to see the common themes throughout all of these, right? And you're going to see correlations to different characters and different archetypes, no matter what particular mythos we're looking at. So, including like from Loki to Lucifer, right, to Prometheus, in the Greek, like we could go on and on with the different comparisons, right? But these are all, archetypes we look at and see. And one of the things I think, when it comes to and remember, the rainbow is the covenant, right, with God, right? This is the sign of the covenant that God made in the Bible to never flood the earth again. Well, there are 7 primary colors that with this rainbow, right? They correlate to the 7 days of the week, the 7 main planets, and see the difference between and God being the Lord of hosts, right? Meaning the heavenly host, which are the stars or the luminaries. Now, what you're going to see with the difference between planets, one, the base word being plane, right? And I believe it's because these planets, heavenly hosts, messengers, watchers, deities, whatever, are not just archetypes, they're actual conscious entities. And they are even so much so that they are even planes of existence, right? Or they are within different dimensional aspects of reality, right? So we know that plane actually means, or a planet means a wandering star, right? So if you think about the difference between a luminary or a heavenly host, meaning the stars that are above in the firmament, that are actually watching, that are looking down, spectating or observing all of creation, God being the Lord of hosts, as opposed to the planets, which we think, they're just planets because they're part of our solar system or our solar system. Well, the definition is quite different. It means wandering stars. So these are stars that have actually left their post. Now, if you think about what a fallen angel would be, right? One that is fallen, this means that they've actually left their original orbit, their original configuration to come down here and be with us on this plane, this realm, this dimensional space, whatever it is, because we still haven't really figured out, people can claim to, but nobody truly knows, what this creation truly is embodying. So we'll start here with Ragnarok and the story of Ragnarok. Now, Ragnarok is the Old Norse Ragnarok. It is the final fate of the gods. And is the word the Vikings used to refer to the cataclysmic event that will bring about the destruction of the cosmos. Ragnarok is the final chapter in Norse mythology. The story is told in the most detail in the prophecy of the Seeress, the Song of Valkyrdir, and the Pros Edda. Now, while these sources, as we've seen, are all rather late and suspect, the basic theme of the final battle between the gods and the giants that ushers in the end of the world sources. And you see how here too, and this is something that I pointed out, over the past, and I don't know if this just kind of correlates to different, what I suspect is happening, I guess, like when we look at like the Asir and, the different, species of gods, like, for instance, Elohim and Nephilim, right? These are two different gods. This would be the gods and the giants, right? Like we're seeing in this, version, this pagan version. Or we look at, for instance, in the Mesopotamian, Akkadian, and Sumerian epics, right? Babylonian mythos, you'll see the Anunnaki and the Agigi, right? Or Agigi, depending on how you pronounce that, but I say Agigi. The Anunnaki and the Agigi, right? So you have these two different ones. Well, then you even have in some mythos, like with the Greeks, you have like the elementals, like Gaia and Uranus and all of this. Like, so it even goes back even further, right? Which would be like the Titans, the Olympians, right? These are all different, different ages, I believe, of creation, or different cycles of creation, different cycles of the matrix. I don't know, right? But when it says like we descend from the gods and we're made in their image, I do believe we share some sort of ancestry with them. So Ragnarok goes a little something like this. It says, one day, perhaps tomorrow, or perhaps thousands of years into the future, that dreaded time of which the prophecies have long spoken in hushed, furtive whispers will finally come to pass. The army of countless elite warriors that Odin has been amassing in Valhalla will pour out their Lord's golden hall to fulfill their long-awaited purpose. And just think about, like, anytime you hear heaven, it's always like a city of gold, roads paved with gold, right? So, and gold in, the occult or in esoteric terms is always correlated to the heavens or the firmament above, right? Which would be like the higher heavens, the higher aeons, or it's correlated to the spirit, right? Like our souls. Now, the first sign, and we'll see silver, which is kind of correlated to the subconscious or the lower aeon, or the lower heavens. Now, the first sign of the coming of Ragnarok will be the Fimbulwinter, or the Great Winter. And, this is like, like dark winter, shit like that. There's been, many other speculations and prophecies that surround this as well. It's 3 winters and remember the Bible says, let your flight days or the end times, that you don't want it to happen in the winter because of how much more drastic and how much more terrible, it will actually be. And it's saying in, this particular mythos that it is in the winter, and that it's 3 consecutive winters that follow each other in a row, with no summer in between. Darkness, ice, and wind will grip the earth and refuse to let go, and the sun will be pitifully distant and weak. And think about how the Bible talks about the sun will not give its light anymore, the moon will turn blood red. All right, I think we're good. If you guys could let me know in the chat if you can hear me and see me and all that good stuff. If you let me know in the chat if you could hear me and see me, that would help me a ton. Are we, make sure we're coming through here. All right, looks like we're good. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. Thank you. Audio good. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know why this app don't do the camera when I do the screen share. So it's like, I don't know. It's just weird. So sorry about that. All right, I'll pick up where I left off now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Seriously. And then it came from YouTube. And if you guys are watching those on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you're watching it from, make sure to follow me on Rumble. It's rumble.com/bestdampodcast or rumble.com bestdampodcast or rumble.com the bestdampodcast. I try to take all the URLs. I'm a URL thief. Here we go. So the first sign of the coming of Ragnarok will be in the Fimbulwinter, the Great Winter, 3 winters that follow each other in a row with no summer in between. Darkness, ice, and wind will grip the earth and refuse to let go, and the sun will be pitifully distant and weak. All virtue shall leave humankind. Even the bonds of family will fail to restrain brothers, fathers, and sons from killing each other. It will be an age of swords and axes. No shield will remain in all the world that is not broken into pieces. The wolves who have pursued the sun and the moon throughout the millennia will at last catch their prey. Under the dark sky, the land will heave and quake. Trees will be torn up from their roots. Mountains will crumble and valleys will be filled in. Yggdrasil itself will tremble and totter. Heimdall will blow the Jarlborn to warn the gods of the impending disaster. And I feel like and I'm just speculating here, but y'all can fact check me on this. I believe that's like the trumpet, right? To warn of the impending disaster. And think about this, like this, once again, you see this kind of correlate with what the Bible says, right? The blowing of the trumpets. I believe it actually says that with a great shout, and I don't know if it's the angel Gabriel, but he has 1 foot on the land and 1 foot on the sea, right? And basically like with a great shout, like, before it's all over with, like this final earthquake that kills 7,000 and all of this, right? And it's talking about the earth shaking, and it says everything that can be shaken will be shaken. So we see like these similarities from whether it's the Hopi prophecy that's talking about, the mountains falling, the artificial mountains falling on the men that are inside of them, the kings and the leaders of the military, or, the Bible saying, islands and mountains moved from their place, and men and women calling for the mountains to fall on them and hide them from the face of the one who sits on the throne, right? Either way, you're kind of like seeing the same thing. Now it says, Odin will desperately consult with Mimir's head, which was severed from his body so long ago in the war between the gods, to see if there is anything he can do to avert the inevitable. He will not like the answer he receives. And what is it? Perseus, who cuts off the giant's head and like uses it as a weapon, right? Turning people to stone. And Medusa's head as well was also like, and this was another one of the things you see King David, right? King David, when he slays Goliath, right? He takes his Goliath's sword and he chops off the giant's head, because that's the only way to kill these giants, right? Is by beheading them, So then those monsters the gods have taken such pains to get rid of will find themselves free. So this would be like your Abaddon, Abaddon, Apep, Apepi, Apophis, right? This god of chaos and darkness, that the king over the bottomless pit or the abyss, who is released, right? And, this is like hell being brought to earth. Then those monsters the gods have taken such pains to get rid of will find themselves free. Jormungskund, the great serpent, who has lain in the ocean encircling the world, will rise up from the waves and slither onto land displacing so much water that no one will be able to tell any longer where the land ends and the sea begins. And if I don't know if how many people are familiar with this, but the world serpent, have you guys ever seen this? It's like literally the serpent's head that is in, I want to say it's like right around the South Atlantic anomaly or somewhere. We'll pull it up if we can, but here in a second. But it's like this serpent's head, it's called the world serpent. It's literally this head of a snake that you can find, on a topographical map. It looks just like the head of a snake, right? And it's in the ocean, literally, right? And if we know anything from like Enki's World Order, which is, one of the mythos around the Anunnaki, right? And, Enki being like the good god and Enlil, his brother, the Lord Commander. They talk about this celestial war between Enki's son, which remember, if Enki is the creator, his son, Marduk, right? Who basically sacrifices himself, right? Like in this fight, this is like kind of like your common denominators between God and Jesus and all of this, right? His firstborn son, right, becomes the ultimate God, right? But and Marduk ascends to the heavens, or whatever, and we see Christ actually the same thing. He has a transfiguration, and he ascends up to the throne with the Father, right? But Marduk actually defeats, and there are essentially two serpents. So when we see like the double helix or the caduceus, right? It's highly symbolic of these two serpents. It's a red and blue serpent, right? Which is why we have, and I believe this is why we have, the Democrat-Republican split, right, within the world, right? It's very symbolic of that. It's like Mars, Venus, masculine, feminine. It's very occultic in nature. And then when you take red and blue colors and you put them together, you get purple, right? Which is the color of like majesty or royalty as well, right? Which is making the two become one. All of that, which is more of like kind of occultic, hermetic, ideologies, but we'll get into that another day. But this female serpent, Tiamat, she was like this all-devouring, serpent, and Marduk, and Nibiru, which Nibiru is the Babylonian word for Jupiter. So, you can take that with a grain of salt if you want, because Jupiter is also known as the king planet. There's also been and then think about within these deities that I'm speaking about, these seven, main deities as well. This would be your Thor, all of this, right? Which is also known as like the leader of the gods, right? He's the one who becomes he's the son of Kronos, right? And all of this. So it's like we see over and over and over in these mythos, these same bodies, same celestial bodies, playing the same exact roles and having very similar archetypes. And one could even draw comparisons to Jesus, which I'm not saying that Jupiter is Jesus, but I'm saying that there are comparisons, right? Because it's like he bore our stripes. Jupiter is a striped planet. He's the king of kings, right? And Jupiter is the king planet. So, I think that's where kind of like the similarities kind of end. But still, there's still some there, right? So the monsters that the gods have taken such pains to get rid of will find themselves free. Jormungandr, the serpent, who is laying in the ocean encircling the world, will rise up from the waves and slither onto land. So the same serpent that Marduk, Nibiru, has destroyed, right, and broken into pieces, sent all the way to, they broke the serpent into pieces in the Mesopotamian mythos, right? So that they'd never be put back together. And what I believe has actually happened here, and this is just my opinion, is that Tiamat is actually the asteroid belt, or what they call the hammered bracelet in the Norse mythology, in between Jupiter and Mars, right? They know that because of the harmonic balance of the planets, that there was actually another planet there, right? They know that at that particular distance where that hammered bracelet is or asteroid belt is, that there actually was another body there. And that Earth is, some believe, a piece of that remaining Tiamat. And I believe that Tiamat, being this all-devouring entity, that it was actually spirit, right? Some type of spiritual consciousness. And that these gods broke it into pieces and made humans out of it. Now, this sounds kind of crazy, because then they take the one god in the Mesopotamian mythos, which was Kingu, was his name. And think about that, King Yu, right? Like, get it? King Yu. So Kingu, which was the one who, he was given the tablet of destiny and all of this by Tiamat. He was punished, basically. So they sacrificed him. And when they sacrificed him, they used his soul to put into mankind. So think about it. They've taken this all-devouring spirit, this serpent, broke it into a bunch of pieces in the Mesopotamian, and then took the spirit of one of these gods and also put it in there, and then we get the slave race of humanity, right? And the slave race of humanity is essentially, if you think about this from a standpoint of a simulation theory, and this is kind of how I see it. If you've got this all-encompassing, omnipresent spiritual consciousness, and remember, the Anunnaki said that they create a slave race to mine gold, right? And that they were the black races, was the slaves. I don't believe this was actually skin color. I believe that this was talking about, our, demonic energy, or our shadow, if you will, the subconscious, right? That's what I believe they were talking about. Or, how we see in the Bible when it says in Genesis, it says we were made in the image of the Elohim, right? And the Elohim image means basically that it's a phantom, a projection, or an illusion. It can even be boiled down to the word specter, right? Or an idol. So when it's talking about in the Bible not to worship false idols, the false idol is you, it's your physical body, right? Because spirit gives creation to everything physical, right? So the illusion is the physical world. That's what's not real, even though it seems like it's the most real, So I believe that physical reality, that shadow, that specter, that, that's what they're talking about when they're talking about the slave race that was created by the gods, right? Humanity, not actual black people. But you never know, right? Because we do also know that that's where the whole Aryan race stuff comes from as well. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, right, with the Norse gods, and even looking at the Mayans and stuff, right? They described the god Quetzalcoatl as a giant white guy, right? That's why when the Spanish came to conquer them, the conquistadors came to conquer them, right? They fell for that shit. Right? They thought that it was the gods returning, on their ships, And you got to think, they didn't believe like we believe. They don't believe in the same concept of space. They believe space was water, because they talked about these seas and these ships and these heavenly hosts. You have maritime law. Everything kind of correlates to water. And it's even described as that, in Gnostic texts, reality of the rulers or hypothesis of the archons. It's the water above the firmament and the waters below, representing the heavens and representing the underworld or Sheol, right? So, it's kind of neither here nor there, but it's also at the same time, it's all of these different stories and mythologies and, scriptures and text are all kind of, barking up a similar tree or talking about a similar vein. Now, it says, then those monsters, the gods have taken such pains to get rid of, will find themselves free. Jormungskund, the great serpent who has lain in the ocean encircling the world, will rise up from the waves and slither onto land. Displaced placing so much water that no one will be able to tell any longer where the land ends and the sea begins. Fenrir, the dread wolf, will break the chain with which he was bound. He will run furiously over all the earth, with his lower jaw on the ground and his upper jaw against the roof of the sky, devouring everything unfortunate enough to be caught in between. Fire will roar from his eyes and nostrils. Now, this is kind of like where Fenrir to me would be akin to Apophis, right? The Egyptian god of chaos and darkness. The destroyer, right? That we read in the Colbrin, in the last video. If you kind of think about it, right? He's like this all-devouring thing, and he's going from sky all the way down, right? Like he's devouring everything in his path, and he's like fire and destruction in his wake, right? And it even talks about in the destroyer, like the same thing. It's saying that in the train of the destroyer, water will raise up, from the oceans and swell up over the lands, and that will have pole shift and all kinds of shit. Now, this is where I feel like it kind of gets interesting. It says, Naglfar, the nail ship, and you're going to see why I think this is interesting, a long ship made from the fingernails of all dead men and women, will become unmoored from its former resting place at the bottom of the ocean. When it floats up to the surface, the gods will recoil in terror at the sight of its countless oars, all manned by giants, and its helm captained by none other than Loki. Now, the reason I find this to be interesting is because the name, the nail ship, and it's in other translations, it's like it's the hands and feet. So it's the fingernails and toenails of men and women, right? The dead. Now, if you look at the tetragrammaton in the different translations, it's like Yahweh and all of this, it's hands nailed, feet nailed. And right, we see this with Christ, right? Like Jesus, he was crucified, right? His hands were nailed and his feet were nailed to the cross, right? So I find this to be just very fascinating, just the similarities alone. And then we know what happens when Christ returns, do we not? The dead will rise in Christ first, right? So you got these, and when they're talking about these waters, I don't believe they're talking about the bottom of like the Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean. I think they're talking about like the cosmic ocean, like Sheol and like the heavens. Like I said, they had a different take on cosmology than we do today. So it's like you got to kind of think of it in their mindset, So these are like the dead souls coming up out of Sheol because, hands nailed, feet nailed has returned. But their interpretation is that it's not a good guy, right? That it's actually Loki. Right, which Loki is a trickster. So this could also, be your Lucifer, your Hermes, Thoth, right? Like those type of deities as well. It says, then the fire giants will arrive from Muspelheim. And we know the fire giants, these are also like akin to the jinn, right? The jinn are made from smokeless flame. So giants, jinn, archons, all of them, right? They're basically like the same entities, and from what I can gather. And it says it will lead them while swinging his flaming sword that shines brighter than the sun. Now think about that. The fire giants will arrive from Muspelheim, the land of elemental fire. Surt Black will lead them all the while, and think about the different horsemen that arrive in the apocalypse, and the last one being death, right? It says, will arrive and will lead them while swinging his flaming sword that shines brighter than the sun. They will march across Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that leads to the door of Asgard, and the bridge will snap and collapse under their weight. They will ransack the gods' sanctuary, forcing its inhabitants to flee. And to me, this rainbow bridge, I believe, like with this covenant with Yahweh, right? It's the rainbow, and like I said, it's called sololuminescence, or the process of star in a jar. I've talked about this in the past. How essentially, if you look at like the magnetic field or the firmament as like a prism, as a prism, and the archons, these colors that make up, this filtering through this prism of reality. It's, and they are the rulers of the reality, or the governors of this reality. Then you would have them actively holding this physical world together, or being kind of like the key elements of this physical world. They could actually even make up this rainbow bridge. It could be the solar system, or it could just be, basically like this particular aspect of the dimension that holds, physical entities, in place, or physical entities, and essentially that's what we are. We're made up of, whatever, this star in a jar, this imposing of conscious energy from the celestial spheres that, paired with soul, or with spirit, create us, and that's why the practice of astrology and all that is so accurate, right? It's because it's like those were the celestial influences when you were born. So those were the most prominent energies that make up who you are. And people can say, astrology isn't true and all this because I'm a Christian. It's like, well, just because it's evil or dark doesn't mean it's not true. And I think that's where some people get it twisted. It doesn't mean it's not real or it's not true. If it wasn't real or true, it wouldn't be an effective tool, for occultists, and, for, a form of divination, It's like the same thing of like, you're not supposed to practice witchcraft, but it doesn't mean it's not real. Witchcraft is as real as me and you, but it's not supposed to be practiced, right? The same thing with astrology. It's like you're not supposed to, use the stars for divination, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means you're not supposed to, because it's embodied by a darker energy. It's a lower star than the creator. And if you read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he even talks about something similar to that. He's like, how mankind has basically replaced the consciousness that they were once at one with spawn of a lower star, right? So it's like, if you think about that, it's like if the world is, especially now, like as morally bankrupt as the world truly is, think about that. The spawn of the lower star would be like Satan, right? Like that's a lower star than the Lord, right? The heavenly host, although some of them, have good qualities as well, they're not God, right? They're not they're not the one true living God. So it's like they don't have that authority. They don't have that perfection. So it's like, if you're using those energies, and we are, whether we know we are or not, by the things that we give our attention to, where, attention goes, energy flows. That's what we're worshiping in our life, right? Wherever we're placing our attention on, and whether we're using astrology, tarot, whatever, right? Like there's spirits behind that, just like same thing with politics. If you look at and that's why I think like a lot of movements are so, everything essentially corrupts, right, within this world. So says all will converge at Vigrid, the place of surging battle. A plain no less than 100 leagues wide and long. There will stand on one side all the giants, along with Fenrir, Jormungskund, and Loki. On the other side will stand all the gods, backed by Odin's army of dead champions. Odin will ride into battle first and will come up against Fenrir. The wolf will swallow Odin in his gaping maw. It should be jaw, that's a typo. But then Vidar, Odin's son and avenger, will stride forth and rip the jaws from his face, and that will be the end of Fenrir. Thor will long to come to the aid of his father, but he will be powerless to do so, for he will have his hands full with his own archenemy, Jormungskund. Vigrid will become a morass of lightning, thunder, and venom as two ancient foes finally face each other. Thor will slay the snake with his hammer, but by that time, his body will be so full of the monster's poison, the gods ablest that he will only be able to take 9 steps before falling down dead. And see, I think too, this is another thing that I really believe when it comes to, these mythologies, is that a lot of them, they represent, and this is just kind of like my opinion, this is why I think they survive throughout all of history, like, thousands and thousands of years, because they have like some collective, they represent a part of like the human story or the collective consciousness. It's like, is he taking 9 steps because we're, it's like 9 dimensions, right? Like, and you guys have heard like the Council of 9 and shit like that, right? And I believe it's like the Chinese that talk about like different 9 incarnations of the world, right? Or 9 versions of the world. And then there's even been different theories. I've talked about some of them. It's been a while, but different theories surrounding these, like catastrophic, or being like the realm of catastrophism. Basically, that with each one of these end of the world scenarios, that it's happened multiple times, that every time it ends, like a new world is created, right? Or that they're created with there's a catastrophe, like this destroyer or Nibiru or Fenrir or insert entity or archetype here collides with Earth, and that every time it collides, and this could also be kind of like what they're telling us too with Marduk, right, as well, right, because he breaks Tiamat into all these pieces, that each time one of these collisions happens, like a new sun is made and a new planet is made. And if you think about it happening 9 times, look at our solar system, right? So it's like the 9 celestial bodies have been created from 9 worlds ending, right? And each one of these celestial bodies could represent one of those ages or dimensions. Like, because remember, time isn't real, right? That's like a human construct. So there could be spawns of consciousness living on every single one of the planets that we have within our solar system, and like some of them are from older, incarnations. Some of them are from future, right? And we haven't lived them yet. I don't know, but, and I'm merely speculating, but I'm just saying it's like a possibility. Now, the god's ablest defender, Heimdall, will finally get the chance to take on the god's betrayer, Loki. And, he's definitely Satan in this. Both will slay each other, as well as Tyr, the wolf, Garm, and Frey, and Surt, and all the other gods and giants will perish in the same manner. So it's like, if you kind of like look at it, it's like they're all canceling out each other, right? It's like the positive and negative canceling one another out. It says, by that time, search fire will have covered all the world with no gods left to uphold it. Its charred mass will sink into the sea from which it arose. Now think about that as well. This isn't, like I said, like the Pacific Ocean type of sea. This is the sea of like the abyss, right? Space. And I was just talking about this in the last video, how, there are different, and it talks about this in the Hopi prophecy, how like when time ends, right? And the Bible as well, too. It doesn't, specifically say the same thing, but it says like, men will seek death in those days and not find it. Well, the only reason you couldn't die is because like something changed, right? To where you can't physically off yourself anymore, right? And if there's no more death, if there's no more death, then that means something changed with our paradigm of time. And the Hopi talk about how all dimensions kind of like collapse together, right? And then the demons walk the earth. And I believe it is, what is the name of the book? It's a Tracy Twyman book, which we may get into some of her stuff tonight. Trying to think of the name of this book. But she done these, basically these seances, Tracy Twyman did before she passed away. Which, if you haven't ever looked that up, that's a crazy rabbit hole. She was into some really dark stuff with the pedogate and all of that, and Isaac Cappy, and just, she had definitely got herself into some shit, and, she was extremely targeted and just all kinds of stuff. And then, her unaliving of herself seemed, I don't know how, it wasn't investigated more. She went to the FBI. I mean, she made videos, like, literally talking about how she was getting threats, because of the stuff she had uncovered, and then she winds up dead, so. But that's another story. But before she died, she was, she had done some work on different seances, and she was heavily into the occult and secret societies and stuff like that as well. She had done some seances, and she had talked to Cain and the Black Sun, which and she used a Ouija board, which is extremely dangerous. But that's what she did. That was the medium she chose to use. I'm not here to judge. I'm just stating what happened. But she went to speak to Cain and the Black Sun first, and this Black Sun is basically Rupus Negre, right? And it's basically like the entrance to the hollow earth. So if you guys have ever seen my video on Operation High Jump, I get into all of this, right? The Rupus Negra and all of this, like this entrance to the hollow earth, and this is allegedly the entrance to Sheol, is what it is. It's like the realm of darkness, and instead of like the sun that we have that gives off light and goodness and abundance and all of this, they have a very different sun, and this would be like the whole culmination of the two brothers, right? Of like I said, we had in the Mayans are known as like Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, right? And Tezcatlipoca is the black sun, and you notice like the black sun is very prominent in the occult, right? And it's basically like at the top of hell or the underworld or Sheol. In a future time, the end times, essentially all these realms connect, right? And that's what allows, time to end. That's what allows death to end. But that's also what allows the locusts to come up from out of the bottomless pit, essentially, and what allows the king over them to be on the earth. It says those who are those who say that the downfall of the cosmos will not be final, and that after the land sinks into the sea, it will somehow arise again. Fresh and green, it will yield vast crops without any work having to be done to sow, tend, or harvest them. The gods Vidar and Vali will survive to see the day, as will Thor's sons Magni and Modi. Balder and Hod will return too, to join these other gods. Two humans, Leif and Leifrasir, life, and the one who strives after life. And isn't that so interesting? You know, once again, just names like life and the one who strives after life. So it's like, this is kind of like going back to what I was saying about, you know, Tiamat and Kingu, right? It's like the spirit and then, you know, like the image, right? So it'd be, life would be like the image, and the one that strives after life would be your spirit, right? So I don't know. But it says, we'll have waited out the destruction of the world by hiding in a tree trunk, and they will then emerge to repopulate the earth. The daughter of the sun will rise into the sky and follow her mother's course, bringing a light even fairer than that of the old sun to the lands below. The gods will find in the grass golden game pieces that their forebears had once enjoyed. All will spend their days in merry pleasure, with no giants to disturb their contentment. A new all-powerful God will appear in the heavens, and he will rule over all with perfect justice and virtue. But those who say these things lack understanding and have not attentively considered the Lord that has come down to them. So, and I'm not going to get into the epilogue because I kind of disagree with this guy, but basically, like, you know, if you think about, like, especially like from a Christian perspective, this would be like, you know, like when all the tears are wiped away and, you know, there's no more suffering and all of that, right? Like we could kind of like see it more as something like that, you know, as opposed to, you know, and the hiding in the tree trunk, we could look at that as a few ways, right? Like we have the tree of life, we have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then also, you know, there are a lot of mythos surrounding, like, you know, ancient texts and the occult to that. Angels or giants or whatever were in the trees, and that's why when like there was the reset of the planet, they actually cut down the trees, right, and caused the great flood, you know. And I don't know if you guys, are familiar with, you know, that, but like trees, whenever the, you know, you see like a tree, because its roots go down into the earth, right? Like whenever they're cut down or holes drilled into them, water pours out of them. There are like many people, especially nowadays, cause the great floods. And you can see this too. It's like in trees, like giant trees that were as big as mountains, you know, bigger in some cases. And this is where you get like and fables are very similar. Like what we think is like fairy tales or fables or whatever, very much like mythos. I don't believe they're all fake. I believe they're, once again, they speak to like the unconscious. And this is almost a way of us preserving knowledge. And this is just something that I've found over the years, like from studying this stuff. is like when you read some of these stories, it like unlocks something in your unconscious. I don't know how to explain it other than by saying like these stories in themselves, because they have this symbolism and these patterns in them. It's like just by the simple fact of you like reading it and ingesting it and speaking it and just, you know what I mean? Like having it in your being, it imprints on you and like activates, something within you, and you can kind of like get a similar feel like in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, where he says like to read these tablets 100 times, and if the light is in you, right, it will recognize the light in these tablets. It's kind of like the same thing. And if you think about like Egyptian hieroglyphs and like pictograms and all of this shit from ancient civilizations, these symbols, symbolism, why it's so powerful is because, as like a character, individual characters, they have meaning and words have meaning, but languages can be dead languages and stuff like that. They have to be continuously added on to be alive and growing, right? Symbolism, it's not, it doesn't just embody like a word, right? It embodies like an entire idea or concept or archetype. So it's almost alive, right, within the symbols. And just the fact of you viewing said symbol, whether you understand what the symbol means or not, there's some type of connection that is made, right? It's like it's the same thing as sigil magic, essentially, right? Like you might not understand what my sigil is that I create magically, but you don't have to, right? Like as long as the person that made it knows what they were putting in there, some people will be able to connect to that and pick up on that energy, and other people will be oblivious to it, but it doesn't take away from its power, right? It still is packed with the idea or the archetype or whatever that was originally put into that meaning. And this is why memes are so powerful as well. It's meme magic, right? And we'll get into that as we, go through tonight. Like, and this is why I think you've seen, especially, and like I feel like people are probably going to think I'm picking on the right. I'm not. It's just like, the left is just so irrelevant now that there's not much really, I feel like it's been soundly defeated in culture, like popular culture, the left and liberalism and, those ideologies have been soundly defeated. And I think for one, it's because we know that with AI, if we teach it these, these falsities, these falsehoods, right? Like it's going to probably, if AI eventually controls humanity, which at one point it may, right? It may run governments, it may do everything, right? And I actually heard it put like really elegantly by Elon Musk in his recent appearance on Joe Rogan. And he was saying that, if you teach an AI, these lies essentially, like, there are two genders and that a white male's life isn't equal to a man of color's life, right? Like they're 1/20th the value of a black man, like just these stupid fucking ideologies, these retarded fucking ideologies, right? That it will try to impose them upon people in the future, So it's like humanity really has no choice. We can't really, the fuckery has to stop. And I think that if people really want to know why censorship and all of that is kind of ending, and it's not ended completely, but why there's been like this little mini rollback on censorship and why common sense has been kind of brought to the forefront over the last couple of years, more so again. In the zeitgeist, I think that's why. I don't think it has anything to do with those in power being benevolent and giving a fuck about the useless eaters and the profane, right? I honestly don't. I don't think they give a shit about me and you. I don't think they give a shit if we're cutting off our cocks and our kids are maiming themselves. If, like they were the ones who pushed all this morally bankrupt, debaucherous bullshit on us to start with. I think that they know that it will be imposed upon them as well, right? If they continue down this road with AI, essentially, right? So, I don't really know where I was going with that, but, I do feel like that's why we're seeing like the rollback with all that. But yeah, where I was going with that, with the Keck thing, right? And you see like now, like the spinoff would be like the Keck the Frog, definitely representing like the Trump movement, meme magic, the mimetic mind, the Keck mind virus. Some of you guys that's old school or jumped into the deep web knows what I'm talking about. If not, you will by the end. And then even like the Groyver movement is like a spinoff of the Keck frog, right? And this is a god of darkness. This is an Egyptian deity. So this is a demonic entity, that once again, that symbol, that logos, that sigil, right, representing something, in this particular case being a demonic Egyptian deity, right, that sows discord and darkness. Now I want you to look at like the political movements. What spirit do they have behind them? Is it just a coincidence? I don't think so. I mean, that's just my opinion. It's my opinion. I think the reason we see, and people can say, what they want. It doesn't matter if you support Trump or you're on the right or whatever. It's like, which I even hate. I hate even bringing up anything about politics anymore because people are so fucking gone. There's so much they're toast, right? They're brainwashed to no end when it comes to the political shit. And but it's like, look at the spirit of the political stuff. That's all I'm saying. Look at how divisive it is. It's even divisive within its own shit, right? Like, look at like left versus right. Extremely divisive, extremely hateful. Like, you look at the Charlie Kirk stuff, and I know like a lot of this is psyop, right? Like, I believe like, like the false flags and people not really dying and shit like that happens all the time. But that's neither here nor there. It's not for today. Even though that is part of witchcraft by giving you an illusion or a delusion, right? Deceiving you, into believing something to harvest energy for that, right? But I mean, look at like the division within politics, right? And then look at even on the political, like their own political sides, like even within the right, you have, they're all calling for Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and like, and Nick Fuentes and all these people are saying they're not MAGA and they're not, it's like, you get what I'm saying? There's division even within the factions, because it's just a divisive fucking spirit. It's a dark spirit. And that's why you see this like, and like this edge of that spirit too. Like, I want you to just kind of think of like how that spirit feels too. It's like really, really vengeful, vindictive, you know what I mean? It's like you see that like play out through the political shit all over. And everybody that represents these. And remember, Maria Abramovich, which is the world famous spirit cooker, she said on multiple times, and you guys can go check my Facebook, my YouTube shorts, I posted them, talking about how Trump is the great MAGA, the great magus, right? Meaning the magician, right? Because he will create so much chaos, forcing the people to awaken, and that's where MAGA derives from. It means it's magus. It's from the temple of Set, the temple of Satan. And a lot of people just don't know that. And then think about the whole red hat thing, you know, and then the Hopi prophecy that even talks about the red hats, you know, and then the Bible, the red horse that takes peace from the earth. I do feel like these are demonic influences behind all of it. I don't care what you think, honestly. So it's like, if you disagree and you don't want to watch me for that, then go ahead and eat a cock and go watch somebody else. So I mean, there's that, you know, and I feel like that's really why we see, you know, that. So, um, now we're going to get into, I don't want to do the anomalies first. I think I want to go to, whoops, not that. Shit. All right. Let me make sure I'm good here. All right. All right. We get into the book of Enoch first. All right. And all right. And I like to go back a little bit because just honestly, this really just gives you an idea of like how everything is created when it like talks about how the gods taught man to do, you know, this and that. It's kind of like just goes to say of like, you know, the things I was saying, like the archons or the planets and all that, like imposing their energy upon mankind, you know, in whatever way that is. So when it came to pass, when the children of men have multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels and the children of the heavens saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives from among them, the children of men, and beget us children. Semyaza, who was their leader, and unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us swear an oath and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it, and they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Semyaza, their leader, Erakiba, Ramiel, Kokabiel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Danel, Ezekiel, Barakiel, Asasiel, Amaros, Batarel, Anamel, Zakiel, Samapiel, Satarel, Turiel, Jamiel, Sariel. And these are their chiefs of kings. And once again, we see like, you know, chief archons. And if you look at anybody familiar like with the occult, especially, knows that there is a hierarchy in hell, right? Like, so like when it's not just, you know, they have kings and dukes and all kinds of shit, right? So like I was talking about earlier, how Tracy Tryman was, you know, doing the seances with Cain and the Black Sun. Well, Cain and the Black Sun eventually led her to Baphomet, right? And that's where she got a lot of her, you know, her information. It's like, and just I can tell you personally, you know, like, you know, when you like mess around with certain stuff, dude, you know, it opens you up to shit, and maybe that's why she's not here with us anymore, you know, because we lose our divine protection when we fall out of a state of grace, right? And anytime we try to fill that spiritual hole with anything else, like, whether that's astrology, tarot, whatever, like insert, vice here, sex, drugs, alcohol, anything, right? Anytime we try to fill that hole with anything, then we are essentially giving ourselves over to that spirit or whatever, and it's like we fall out of a state of grace. And when we fall out of a state of grace, that's when we essentially can fall victim to hexes and curses and all of that. That's when demons, demonic entities, and the spiritual world can really wreak havoc on our asses. And that's a fact. And I know that to be firsthand. I know that to be true. Firsthand. So it's like that's what the whole, the big thing is with Jesus. Is like, Jesus, you're covered in the blood. And it's like, and for those that aren't like super Christian or anything, like, just kind of look at it like this. It's like the Creator himself knew that this was a world of covenants and agreements, and that all these energies were unleashed down here, and we had already been deceived by them because these are entities far smarter than us. So the only thing, like, so let's say I make some sort of offering to some fertility god because I want to, have a baby or something, or I want money or whatever, right? That God will grant it. It may even heal me from a sickness. It may save my life. It may elevate my stature in society. It may give me all types of cool shit, right? But there's a price that has to be paid, right? There's a trade. That's why you're in covenant with it. You're in covenant with your friends, man. So, this is like, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future, right? This is why. It's like when you are in a friendship is a deal of covenant. So it's like, when you become in covenant with a person that's in, it's like, has a Jezebel spirit or the spirit of Mammon, or, just these different, demonic spirits, it's like you're also in covenant with the spirits they're in covenant with, because you are only as good as the company you keep. And that's a fact. So it's like, you'll see people say, everybody's got like one fuck up friend or something, like one friend that's really loose or, really crazy or whatever. It's like, when you're around that friend, you'll do shit you don't normally do, right? That's the friend that, you fucked up and cheated on your spouse when you were hung out with her. It's because that friend, is inhabited by that spirit, right? That spirit of, adultery or Jezebel or whatever, right? Like, that's why. Spirit of Lilith, like these different spirits. So, and you're in covenant with them by holding a friendship with them. You're not supposed to yoke light with darkness. Like, and people really don't take that, I think, serious enough. Same thing with our sexual partners. There is no greater covenant than because in the spiritual sense, like, whoever you're having sex with is who you are married to spiritually, whether you're physically married or not, whether either one of you are faithful or not, it doesn't really matter. Like, you are yoked to that person, and not only are you yoked to them in covenant, but there's an astral tie, like, so it's even stronger than like a regular friendship, right? So when it's that, like, the saying of like, every person you've slept with, you've also slept with all the people they've slept with. That's why purity is so big in the Bible, like being a virgin and all of this. It's got, it's like people think that everything is like, because we're fucking retarded. We think like everything is about like us, oh, well, it was just sexist against women and it was all about controlling people and da-da. No, it truly is like these principles, like these are universal principles. Whether you acknowledge them or not, it doesn't make them any less true. Like you can be a dumbass and think none of it's real. It doesn't matter. It's still going to act on your life just the same. No matter what you think about it. All these people I create my own reality. No, you do not. No, you do not. If you did, then you would be in charge of every circumstance within your life, and you're not. You can't control the circumstances I impose upon your life, so how are you creating your own reality? You can't control the circumstances that the Creator imposes upon your life, so you're not creating your own reality. You may believe you are, and you have a free will on what you are in covenant with and what you're not, right? Like, you do have that, but, so in essence, I guess you are consciously creating it, but you have rules to follow. It ain't, just, a free for all, that's a Luciferian principle, and people don't understand that liberty and, to, that whole Enlightenment movement, it's a very Venusian, Promethean, Luciferian ideology. And that's why the founding fathers were all a part of that. That's why, sexual revolutions and shit like that. You gotta think, Ben Franklin was in the Hellfire Club, He was like banging 1,000 people in Paris, having, like occult rituals and shit like that. These people were all, part of secret societies. It's not a coincidence, Bavarian Illuminati in 1776 and, the United States and all of this. There's no coincidence in that, please understand, there's no more of a Babylonian empire than the one you're living in. So it's like when they say, oh, well, the United States is a Christian nation. No, it's not. It's not. It's not a Christian nation. That's why you're allowed to practice any religion you want. Right? A Christian nation would be like, we only do, Christianity. That would be what we were just simply founded upon. This liberty and all this under God. It's like, what God though? Like, you really better ask yourself, what they were talking about, because the all-seeing eye and all of this, that's not the same God that, they're worshiping in the Bible. Just saying, just saying. If you look at like Freemasonry, their God truly is Lucifer. I don't, and I know some Freemasons will disagree with that. You just haven't went far enough into the degrees yet, right? My advice to you would be to read Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. Then you'll see. Now, all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go into them and defile themselves with them, and they taught them charms, enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. And then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And it's like, you think about that too. This is like the premise of like the elite ruling class to this day. Like, a capitalistic society, as much as like I'm a fan of capitalism, like I don't want to be a socialist or, be in a breadline, or anything like that. But it's like the capitalistic society, like that's another premise of this. It's like, might is right, and you see the people that like, that are at the top of the food chain. You know, it's that whole monopoly thing, right? It's like where they're devouring everything underneath them. That's a spirit, and that's, you know, and think about who they claim that their ancestral ties are to as well. These 13 ruling families, these elite bloodlines, right? There's a reason for that, you know. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawless beings wrought upon the earth. And they said one to the other, the earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their crying up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, bring our cause before the Most High. And they said to the Lord of the ages, Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings, and God of the ages, the throne of thy glory standeth unto all the generations of the ages, and thy name, holy and glorious and blessed unto all the ages. Thou hast made all things, and power over all things hast thou, and all things are naked and open in thy sight, and thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. Thou seest what Azazel hath done, who have taught all unrighteousness on earth, and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven, which men were striving to learn. And Semyaza, to whom thou hast given authority to bear rule over his associates, they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed them all kinds of sin. And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And now behold the souls of those who have died, and crying and making their suit to the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended, and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth. And thou knowest all things before they come to pass, and thou seest the things, and thou dost suffer them. And thou dost not say to us what we are to do to them in regard to these. And you know, you think about you know, Azazel, and you know, him was ascribed all sin. You know, it's like it's all like this was like this original kind of like sacrifice, right? So it's like almost God had no choice, because like what I was talking about with the exchange earlier, these covenants, like payments have to be made, right? So in order for them, like that's like Marduk, right? Like making this ultimate sacrifice to be like the highest rank, right? So God had no choice but to outdo that sacrifice, or to outdo any other sacrifice that preceded, right? Which gave them dominion over mankind, because mankind had dominion, but we gave it away in the garden, right, with the serpent. And that's when, you know, Cain and Abel and all of that, right? So we have the serpent seed, which is what this is talking about, right? You know, and even in the Sumerian epics, like what you see is the leader of the Ajiji, the 200, which Marduk and the Ajiji, so you have this Azazel and Semyaza type of comparison, right, with Marduk and the leader of the Ajiji, and the 200 there, so it's basically the same fucking thing, and they took wives, right? They took wives. And Marduk wasn't allowed to leave the earth, by the way. Like, when a lot of, like, when their destruction came, and a lot of the gods like fled back to Nibiru and shit, like he was born on Earth and he couldn't take being on Nibiru's gravity anymore. So he had to stay here, right? Like, so just saying, and there are different iterations of it too that say kind of like comparisons to Jesus. And basically, like they say like Marduk is like, he reflects our darkness back to us, right? Like, so as where Jesus is like a filter, right? Like he takes all of our sins on, you know, that way we don't have to pay those covenants that we make, you know? And like we're in covenant with the Creator. The Creator put his own essence down here, because that's the you can't top that essence. Like there's no essence greater, because all these beings that we were making covenants with were created by him as well, right? So there's no greater energy, no greater essence. That's why that essence alone has dominion over everything, right? Because it truly is like, there's no greater essence, right? There's no bigger sacrifice than that, so that's why he did it, was to like buy us back, because we sold ourselves into slavery, spiritual slavery, essentially. But in kind of like the way of like Marduk or Azazel, the one who ascribes all sin, and this is why I think there's like this kind of a affinity for Satan and Lucifer, like with people that believe into that, like the reason like a lot of people kind of like fall prey to that, is because it's almost like they try to like twist that narrative and say like as in Marduk's way, like or Azazel's, like he loved us so much, right, that he's willing to take on all the sin, be the adversary or the accuser, right? Reflect our darkness back to us to make us transmute it and transcend it, right? Like, I mean, you can see how that's kind of like a twisting or a manipulation of it, but nonetheless, like that works on a lot of people, because if you like think about it, you're like, oh, wow. So this guy really loves us too, because, I mean, he loves us so much, he's willing to take on all the evil, just to, be like a mirror, and reflect our own evil back to us to make us face it. That way we have to overcome it. And in essence, he is, because every entity works for God, even Satan, the accuser, it's like, and that's what, in Judaism, that's what they believe, that's what they believe. He's an agent of the Lord, and that's what he's doing. He's reflecting back their darkness to you, period. And he's got a job, he's got a job, and you wouldn't know evil if we have to have an agent of evil, basically. Like think about it. If he wasn't working for God, he wouldn't be allowed to exist. Like when people think like that he somehow, this whole rebellion idea, and which I'm not saying there wasn't a rebellion, or like God doesn't let anything go to waste. Like he uses every bad thing in your life. He turns all things for our good. Same thing in the universe, So if we have an entity, like through pride, right, he inverted his original form and become this agent of darkness, this king of the abyss. And he accused, and remember, he's going to and fro, right? So he's actually going to heaven and shit, right? Like, he says it in Job, like, I've been going to and fro, from the earth to to heaven, right? He's going to and fro. So, how could you go to heaven if you're not allowed there? Right? Like, you're employed by the big guy, I feel like God is just like using that, like, that way we are recognizing, like darkness and what it is and who it comes from. And, we chose that. We chose to do that. We chose to do that. I'm going to skip. All right. So I'm going to skip a little ahead here. It says, before these things, Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him, and his activities to do with the watchers, and his days were with the holy ones. And I, Enoch, was blessing the Lord of majesty and the King of the ages. And lo, the watchers called me Enoch the scribe, and said to me, Enoch, thou scribe of righteousness, go declare to the watchers of heaven who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place. And like I said at the very beginning, what are the planets, right? They're wandering stars, right? And remember, there's chiefs among them. They're ranked, right? Just like it's called Le Grand Grimoire or Grand Clavicle of Solomon. It's probably one of the evilest books I've ever read. I've done videos on it, but it's got like rituals in it, like, you know, how to sell your soul. It's just a dark grimoire. It is. It's crazy. And in that grimoire, it like gives you like the ascendancy of the deities in hell, right? Like, so not everybody goes to Baal, right? Like you can go to, you know, it's like Lucifer, Lucifuge Replical, Baal, Beelzebub, like they rank, right? So it's like, and they all have like you know, so many demons underneath them in each rank, you know. So just saying. And you have wrought great destruction on the earth, and ye shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin. All right. And strive of righteousness and watchers of heaven who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, and have defiled themselves with women. Right. So this is what I was saying, like with the wandering stars or the planets, these would be like the king deities, right? Like over, because it says there's 200 that actually descended down. Right? So these would be 200 luminaries or heavenly hosts or stars, right? And even, I want you to think of like, even the Bible when it talks about, like the fourth seal, the fifth seal, all of this, right? It's literally telling you the same thing. It's saying a star falls from heaven to the earth, right? That's an angel, you know? You could basically say that's Satan falling like lightning just in real time, you know? When it says, you know, wormwood and all of this, right? Like, and then it says a star, a blazing, falls into the waters, turn the waters into blood. Like, that's an angel falling, you know? We just, in our modern secular ways of looking at things, we don't consider stars as conscious spiritual entities anymore. But in the more archaic times, we most definitely did. And we knew different. We knew better is what we did. We were so much more spiritual. And, you know, we like to think of ourselves as so much more advanced and intelligent now. I just disagree. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we've actually regressed quite a bit. And if you look at like the fall of Atlantis, and I have this book. It's called "The Children of the Sons." What is it called? Sons of Atlantis. Basically, like I've done videos on it. I got one here on Rumble too. It's got Edgar Casey in Atlantis. It's really cool, but it talks about like this, you know, how the fall actually happened in a different type of way. And it talks about the primordial entities, which remember at the beginning we was talking about these different epochs of, you know, primordials, giants, Olympians, you know, primordials, Elohim, Nephilim, primordials, Asir, right? Like these different versions of the gods. And that in the primordial times, like we were all basically conscious energy, and that earth was like a playground, you know, that God created this as like a playground for, you know, the angels basically. And that we in some understandings would be those angels too, by the way. And you could take that or leave it, but you know, it says that we would come down here and anything we wanted to create with our consciousness, we could create it. Well, when some of these angels came down here, what they did was, and this is just according to this particular, book, um, it says that they would take the forms of like their favorite things. Uh, you know, take the Keck frog for instance. It's a frog head on a man, right? Or Anubis, right? Or those, right? An ibis head, and like all these different things. So that's what they were doing. They were taking, that's why these old gods look like that. They would take like an animal they loved, and like, that's why minotaurs, centaurs, all of this shit came from. Pan and all of this. Like they would take, animals and things that they loved and combine it with men and shit like that. They were just creating whatever. And that when they would get down here, though, that their consciousness would solidify and they got stuck, basically, because this was a physical world. So it's like they were able to do that shit in the heavens and create anything they wanted. But when they got down here and tried to do the same thing, they got trapped in it. And this is where demonic energy has this animalistic side, because they were hybrids, animals and humans, right? And animals, think about it, animals are born with this basic instinct of like mating, killing, fighting, like, you know what I mean? It's like it's born in them, it's inherent in them. They don't have to be taught, And a snake will bite you as a baby the same way it'll bite you before it dies and it's old. You know what I mean? It just knows to bite. Animals know to reproduce. That's all they know, is to eat, to reproduce, and to fight. Now imagine that consciousness, spiritually. And then you have essentially a demonic consciousness, right? Like think about demons. What do? Right? It's all fighting, violence, right? It's all just the pleasures of the flesh, and they can never be. It's like a dog. You can pour food out for a dog. A dog will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, right? Until it makes itself sick. Some animals will kill themselves with food just by continuously eating if it's there, right? Same type of thing. And that's why you see a lot of demons take the shapes of, animals. So, whether it's like jackals or hares or, shit like that, So, but anyways, Enoch, thou scribe of righteousness, go declare to the watchers of the heavens who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, who have defiled themselves with women, and have done as the children of the earth do, and have taken unto themselves wives. Ye have wrought great destruction on the earth, and ye shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin. And inasmuch as they delight themselves in their children, the murder of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children shall they lament, and shall make supplication unto eternity, but mercy and peace shall ye not attain. Right? Basically the same thing, right? Like eternity, they'll never have peace. They're just like the vampire mythos, right? Like he gets life from the blood, right? Which is essentially he's a parasite, if you think about it. And many people now kind of like look at like parasites and viruses as demonic, and I do. And I think that I've seen physical illnesses cured with spiritual practices more than once. A lot, actually. A lot. And this is where like practices of fucking acupuncture and shit originated. Like our energetic fields, our chakras being off balance, right? Like they just understood way more back in the day because they had this forbidden knowledge, for one. And like Atlantis, was a civilization of these giants, I believe, and, they got this dark shit, right, is what in their fall. And you think about all like the Sumerian kings list and all of this, all these kings, the heroes of old, the men of renown, these kings, they were giants, they were gods, right? Pharaohs, they were gods, right? They weren't men. I don't believe. So. And Enoch went and said, Azazel, thou shalt have no peace. A severe sentence has gone forth against thee to put thee in bonds, and thou shalt not have toleration nor request granted to thee because of thou unrighteousness which thou hast taught, and because of all the works of godlessness and unrighteousness and sin which thou hast shown to men. Then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid, and fear and trembling seized them. And they besought to me to draw up a petition for them that they might find forgiveness, and to read their petition in the presence of the Lord of heaven. For from them thenceforward they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes to heaven for shame of their sins for which they had been condemned. Then I wrote out their petition and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually, and in regard to their request that they should have forgiveness and length. And I went off and sat down at the waters of Dan, and in the land of Dan, to the south of the west of Hermon. And I read their petition till I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, bidding me, I tell it to them, the sons of heaven, and reprimand them. And when I awaked, I came unto them, and they were all sitting gathered together, weeping, in Abizel, which is in between Lebanon and Sinacer, with their faces covered. And I recounted before them all the visions which I had seen in sleep, and I began to speak the words of righteousness and reprimand the heavenly watchers. The book of the words of righteousness and the reprimand of the internal watchers in accordance with the command of the Holy Great One in that vision. I saw in my sleep that I will now say with a tongue of flesh and with the breath of my mouth, with the Great One has given to men to converse therewith and understand with the heart, as he has created and given to man the power of understanding the word of wisdom. So hath he created me also and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. And this is still true to this day. This is why we have power over and dominion over demons. Right? I wrote out your petition, and in my vision it appeared thus, that your petition will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity, and that judgment has been finally passed upon you. Yea, your petition will not be granted unto you, and from henceforth you shall not ascend into heaven unto all eternity, and in bonds of the earth the decree has gone forth to bind you for all the days of the world. And think about this too. At one point, right, Satan and Job allowed to go back and forth, right? No more, right? Like, no more going back and forth, right? They're no longer back in heaven. They can't even look up at heaven because of the shame, right? Hangs around their neck. And that you have seen the destruction of your beloved sons, and you shall have no pleasure in them, but they shall fall before you by the sword. And your petition on their behalf shall not be granted, nor yet on your own, even though you weep and pray and speak all the words contained in the writings which I have written. And the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the visions clouds invited me. And I just wanted to say this too, like, the reason, and this is just my understanding of it, people all, wonder, like, why wouldn't God forgive them? To me, it's really simple. They knew God's glory. They knew how just God was. It's like what Jesus is talking about, like the faith of someone who hasn't seen, like the kingdom of heaven, how great that is. Like, they had seen it, and they still chose to go against it. They still chose to fight against God. They still chose to do what they did. So, that's why they get no forgiveness. It's like they already knew that God was just and true and all these things. Like, we get forgiven because we don't really know those things. It's like we don't get to see heaven. We don't, get to see it until after we die. So we get a little leeway, but they do not. Okay. The vision caused me to fly and lifted me upward and bore me into heaven, and I went until I drew nigh to a wall which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire. And it began to affright me, and I went into the tongues of fire and drew nigh to a large house which was built of crystals. And the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor made of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars, the lightning, and between there were fiery cherubim. And their heaven was as clear as water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There was no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got upon me. As I quaked and trembled, I fell upon my face, and I beheld a vision. And lo, there was a second house, greater than the former. The entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames and fire. In every respect, it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I cannot describe to you. Its splendor and its extent. Its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings, and the path of the stars. And its ceiling also was flaming fire. And I looked and saw, and therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. And there was the visions of the cherubim, and from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. And the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. None of the angels could enter and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, yet he needed no counselor. And the most holy ones who were nigh to him did not leave by night nor depart from him. And then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling, and the Lord called me with his own mouth and said to me, Come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. And one of the holy ones came to me and waked me, and he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. He answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous, a man and scribe of righteousness, approach hither and hear my voice. And go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them, you should intercede for men, and not men for you. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, taken to yourself wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? And though ye were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh. And as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those who do die and perish. Therefore I've given them wives, also that they might impregnate them and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanting to them on earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world, and therefore I have not appointed wives for you. For as for the spiritual ones of heaven, in heaven is their dwelling, and now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. And on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers as their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against them, and the children of men against the women, because they have proceeded from them. From the days of slaughter and destruction, and the death of the giants, from the souls of those whose flesh the spirits having gone forth shall destroy without incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of consummation, the great judgment, in which the age shall be consumed over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall be wholly consummated. And now as to the watchers who have sent thee to intercede for them, who have been aforetime in heaven, say to them, you have been in heaven, but all the mysteries have not yet been revealed to you. You new worthless ones, and these in the hardness of your hearts you have made known to the women. And through the mysteries, women and men work much evil on earth. Say to them, therefore, you have no peace. And think about this too. This is just kind of something that I've kind of thought of too. He talks about the hardness of your hearts, and remember, like when he's talking about Pharaoh and stuff and how he like hardened his heart and stuff, you know, like this is just kind of like one little piece of information that kind of makes me think that Pharaoh also, you know, was not human, you know. He had this hardened heart, and if you remember, like in the Colburn, from the last one, it was like they were like doing magical battle, you know, it was like their God versus these gods on earth, basically, you know, and their magic. And they took me and brought me to a place in which there were those who were like flaming fire. And once again, remember, like we have archons, jinn, right? Like all these angelic entities, seraphim, the seraphic beings, right? These smokeless flame or flameless fire or flaming fire. And when they wished, they appeared as men, angels, right? And they brought me to the place of darkness, into a mountain, the point of which whose summit reached to heaven. And I saw the places of the luminaries, and the treasuries of the stars, and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depths, where a fiery bow and arrows in their quiver, and a fiery sword, and all the lightnings. And they took me to the living waters, and to the fire of the west, which receives everything setting of the sun. And I came to a river of fire, in which the fire flows like water and discharges itself into the great sea. Towards the west, I saw the great rivers, and came to the great river, into the great darkness, and went to the place where no flesh walks. I saw the mountains of darkness and winters, and the place whence all the waters of the deep flow. I saw the mouths of all the rivers of the earth, and the mouth of the deep. And see, you know, like he's talking about these waters of darkness, like I was kind of saying earlier too, like when they're talking about these waters, like the nail ship, right? Coming up from the depths of these waters, right? Like the waters of dead, the waters of darkness and Sheol, right? I saw the treasuries of all the winds, and I saw how he had furnished them with the whole creation and the firm foundations of the earth. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the four winds which bear the earth, and the firmament of the heaven. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of the heaven. I saw the winds of heaven which turn and bring the circumference of the sun and all the stars to their setting. I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds. I saw the paths of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of the heaven above. And I proceeded and saw a place which burns day and night, where there are 7 mountains of magnificent stones, 3 towards the east, 3 towards the south. And for those towards the east was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south of red stone. But the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of God of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was sapphire. And I saw a flaming fire, And behind these, or beyond these, mountains in a region at the end of the great earth, and there the heavens were completed, and I saw the deep abyss with the columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw the columns of fire fall, which were beyond measure, alike towards the height and towards the depth. And beyond the abyss I saw a place which had no firmament of the heaven above, and no firmly founded earth beneath it. There was no water upon it, no birds, but a waste and horrible place. Whoops. I saw there 7 stars, like great burning mountains. Now think about this. This is kind of like bringing it all kind of like back full circle. Those 7 stars, I believe, are the 7 planets that I was talking about earlier, right? He's talking about space, right? He's saying, they had no firmament, right? No firmly founded earth beneath it, no water upon it, right? I mean, it's a waste, a horrible place. And these were the 7 stars, like 7 great burning mountains. And to me, when I inquired regarding them, the angel said, "This place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven." So boom, right there. This could be why we call them planets, wandering stars, because they're actually imprisoned down here with us. Now, and the stars which roll over the fire are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord. Which fire are they rolling over? Is this like rotating around the sun? Yeah, just saying. Which they have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come forth at their appointed times. And he was wroth with them and bound them till the time when their guilt should be consummated, even for 10,000 years. Right? So they're bound in the abyss, in the prison, right? You have all these other heavenly hosts. Think about it. Right? They're up, past the firmament. They're in the heavens with God. They're chilling, right? Like there's no, evil correlation to them, right? And then you got these 7 ones that are stuck down here with us in our solar system, and they're in deep shit. They're wandering stars. They didn't come forth at their appointed time, and now they're stuck in an orbit around fire, right, which is the sun. And Uriel said to me, "Here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand till the day of the great judgment, in which they shall be judged, till they are made an end of. And the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. And I, Enoch, alone saw the vision, the end of all things, and no man shall see as I have seen." So think about that. This is like I was saying, the whole soul luminescence process starting in jar, right? The archons, these 7 main planets, actively imposing upon the prism that is the firmament, which kind of projects, and this is like the whole Tiamat Kingu thing, right? Like we are half evil, we're half these demon gods, and we're half the real God, It's what makes us up, And they rule the 7 days of the week, 7 colors of the rainbow, right? All of it, And God kicked their ass during the flood and then bound them up and then used them as like the covenant for never saying, "Oh, I'll never flood you again. I already beat their ass once, right? I won't have to, And now they're bound down here with you as evil spirits until I burn everything up and end it. Basic. And I proceeded to where the things were chaotic, And I saw that there was something horrible. I saw neither a heaven above nor a firmly founded earth, but a place chaotic and horrible. And there I saw 7 stars of the heaven bound together in it once again. See the 7 stars? Like great mountains and burning with fire. Then I said, for what sin are they bound, and on what account have they been cast in hither? Then said Uriel, one of the holy angels who was with me, and was chief over them, and said, Enoch, why dost thou ask? And why art thou eager for the truth? These are the number of the stars of heaven, which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord, and are bound here till 10,000 years. And this to me, the 10,000 year thing, this gets into the cycles, right? Like when we get into like talks about like 110 generations, the 70 generations, right? Like, in Daniel, like I believe they're actually talking about the 7 days of creation. I believe like these are actually cycles is what they're talking about. It's not like because remember, a day is 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day to the Lord, right? So a 7-day creation cycle is 7,000 years. So just saying, and they're bound here for 10,000 years. So it's like, think about we have these 2,600 year procession of the equinox. And we went from like the age of Taurus, there's 2,600. Aries, there's another 2,600. That puts us about 5,200, then add Pisces, another 2,600, right? We're now at what? 72, 78, right? So we're, and then we have still one more age here, age of Aquarius, So that would put us pretty close to the end of the 10,000 years. Just saying. The holy angels who was with me and the chief over them. And then I said for them, what sins are they bound? And I said, Uriel, the holy angels with me, with the chief over them. He said, Enoch, why thou hast, or come here, the Lord, till 10,000 years. The time entrailed by their sins are consummated. And from thence I went to another place. And think about that too. The time entailed by their sins are consummated. Is that how long it takes for mankind to overcome like this lower like spawn or this like mind virus that we have? Like, and I do believe it's a mind virus. I genuinely believe we have like a mind virus in humanity. Multiple of them. I do. That's just my opinion. And people wonder, like, just kind of like think of like when people talk about like, well, we seem to be heading in like the right direction, in society as far as like racism and all these things. And then like the internet kind of blows up, and then it's like we regressed. Well, did we really regress, or was it just easier to spread that mind virus once the internet happened? It's like now we can pass that energy on way easier. And I want you to just kind of like think about the whole concept of the internet, right? We'll use like your broadcasting. So you're casting a spell broadly, right? So it's over a large area or a large swath of people, and you have the creator of that spell, it's content creator or the producer or whatever, right? And they act as a channel. They use logos, right, as their brand, or sigils as their brand, right? This is all witchcraft in essence. And then remember, words have the power of life and death. So they're speaking their words, right, to the people who are subscribes, right, on these channels that have these broadcasts, and then in television that tell a vision, right, and you're watching the programming, right, like in all these different ways, like we're being transmitted these viruses, of the mind and of the spirit. And now where the world is so connected in that way, we wonder how we become so disconnected and detached. And it's like, well, it makes perfect sense if you truly think about it. It's like before we had the internet and all of this, like, it was harder for that, like, it was harder for that, like, ideologies and thought forms and sigils and just all this stuff to be broadly cast, right, to so many people, and to get so much attention and energy and influence and power over people in their consciousness. And now it's very simple. It's like if you're got enough people watching or whatever, like you can have tens and tens of millions of people that see something, and it can have terrible consequences on people, in the way that they see life, the way that they, think about how, like how morally bankrupt we are, that's your proof right there, It's like people say, oh, well, you can't prove none of these things. No, I can't prove it, but I can say there really is, like, we can look at, like, the evidence, If we're going to be evidence-based, we'll just look at society. How divided are we? How morally bankrupt are we? How debaucherous are we? How fucked up are we? Pretty much, right? Really bad. And like I do feel like we're kind of turning the corner now, which is a good thing. But I mean, it's like we had to kind of hit the bottom of the barrel there for a minute, and we may have not hit the bottom yet still, I hope we have, but I feel like there's this sense of optimism now, because it's like people are now seeing like there's only room for truth now, right? Like the masses, it's like bullshit no longer sales, it's people are hip, they're no longer buying into the lies of the system and the media and all of this, of anything. And that's why you see like this. You see, like, people are now starting to see, like, through the new age, and just how, like, how fucked up it can be too, because it really is. New age is like this. What it really is like this. It's like diet Christianity. It's like people that want to pretend like they're of the light and doing good, but without having to actually follow any good principles, or morals. It's like, I can make up my own rules, and it's like, no, you actually can't, because you didn't set the rules, something else did. I think it's highly evident that the world operates under, certain laws and rules. And if you don't see that, then you're just blind, and I can't help you anyways. Like, but just in my opinion, it's like, it's very obvious, right? Like, and now we're seeing that. It's like, maybe it's because, it's like the closer we get towards an end point, it seems like we're accelerating more, right? It's like we've been on this like long journey, so time seemed to be really slow at one, but now as we're like inching towards singularity and like the end of civilization, or ascension, or whatever, right? Whatever, insert ideology here, But as we're like accelerating towards that end point, like time's accelerating. And because of that, karma is accelerating as well. So we see the instant effects of the shit we do now. You know, it's like you say something stupid online, you see instantly the effects of that. People, you know, tear you to ribbons. You know, you get caught in a scandal instantly, right? It comes back on you. And this happens in our personal lives as well. We do fucked up shit, fucked up results come back to us, right? You know, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right? And like that's just, you know, people are seeing that that's true. There are universal laws that are operating on our creation. It's like you know, these new age concepts, I hate to say it, it's just a deception. It just does not work. You know, and if you've operated it successfully, then good for you. But I could not do it. I couldn't find a way to create, to break those laws. No matter how hard I tried, and I feel like that's all the, you know, the new age and shit like that and occultism tries to do. It's like trying to bend those laws, bend those rules. You know, and it's all for selfish, you know, desires, selfish means. People also often wonder, like, how would you get mixed up in Satanism or Luciferianism? And say it's quite simple, really. It's like, it doesn't happen overnight, for one. It's subtle. I think New Age is the gateway drug. That's my opinion on that. You know, because it's like, it's just, you know, the first thing you got to compromise is Christ. Right? Like once you compromise that, like I said, then you're out of a state of grace. You no longer have that divine protection. Right? So then you're open to all kinds of shit. And then you can start morally compromising on other things. If Christ was just a good man and not God incarnate, then you can be equal to him. And then it's based on your works, your efforts, and all of this, and then that gets down a whole slippery slope and all of this, like, you know, and you're trying to, you're essentially trying, you know, creating your own reality as if you are God. You know, a new age is basically like that. It's like, you know, the self-worship as deity, basically, which is Satanism. You know, believing you are your own God. That is Satanism. That's the definition of Satanism, actually. You know, I know a lot of people think of Satanism as the deistic version of Satanism, but the more common version of Satanism is what I just said. You know, and then we've already talked about the Luciferian ideologies of the, you know, the liberty and enlightenment and all of that, right? This also goes into the New Age, or the universalism that's also Luciferian as well. It's just dressed up and disguised. This is why Alice Bailey and would push all this shit, you know, 10-point plan, the New World Order, Theosophy, which, you know, Helena Blavatsky, you know, a lot of this Eastern mysticism, shit, I could go on, you know, and, but there, it is dangerous ground. You know, I'm not saying don't educate yourself or learn any of these things. I'm saying if you do, make sure you are solid and strapped up on your knowledge on what is true and what is scripture and what is real and what is not, because it's just these slight little differences, man. You know, it's like you know, the Christ consciousness thing, seriously, like that seems like such a small difference, like, but it's really just, it's everything. It really is, you know, it's everything. You know, then that sacrifice of that covenant and all that means nothing, you know, if he's just a good dude, you know, and you can embody that consciousness as well, you know. And I know that's probably gonna hit a lot of people the wrong way. I don't care, you know. I've learned my lesson the hard way through all of this stuff by delving into it myself, by, you know, the cults and all of that. Like I said, it don't happen overnight. you know, and it always drives off of our desires, whether it's for money, ambition, fame, lust, right? Like it's always, those are the things that propel it forward, That's what'll push people to do these things, or, that's what entices people. The devil and darkness don't use shitty things to entice you, It's candy that rots your teeth, It's not fucking corn and fucking bread and shit. Like, it's candy that does it. So it's sweet, it tastes good, but it's bad for you. You can't have it all the time, But I digress. Where am I at here? So then I asked regarding it. He answered me saying, "This is the spirit which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew. He makes his suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth." And remember, I was talking about Tracy Twyman in the seances with Cain in the Black Sun, right? Very interesting. Which I don't know if we'll have, time tonight to get to it, but I promise you in the next video, we will get to that shit. Then I asked regarding it and all the hollow places, why is one separated from the other? And he answered me and said unto me, "These three have been made that the spirits of the dead might be separated, and such a division has been made for the spirits of the righteous, in which there is the bright spring of water, and such has been made for sinners when they die and are buried in the earth, and judgment has not been executed on them in their lifetime. Here their spirits shall be set apart in this great pain to the great day of judgment and punishment and torment of those who curse forever and retribution for their spirits. There he shall bind them forever. And such a division has been made for the spirits of those who make their suit and make disclosures concerning their destruction. When they were slain in the days of the sinners, such has been made the spirits of men who were not righteous, but sinners, who were complete in transgression, and of the transgressors shall be companions. But their spirit shall not be slain in the day of judgment, nor shall they be raised from thence. Then I blessed the Lord in glory and said, Blessed be my Lord, the Lord of righteousness, who ruleth forever. And see, that's the thing. Like I was saying, when we are in we essentially bind ourselves to them when we make we're making pacts with them, whether we know it or not. When we make these covenants, dude, and that covenant, whatever you're getting on this side, you're gonna pay it on. It's coming out of one way or another. That's why you see like celebrities, like even Kanye West said his mom was a sacrifice, right? Like, and I can tell you, myself in particular, I had an experience with this, and I refused that particular exchange because I wasn't willing. I knew who they would take, and I wasn't willing to give up any of my children. I'm like, nah, I'm good on that. No thanks. I'll stay poor. Yeah, but some people, they don't care. They'll give up a loved one or whatever for that. From thence I went to another place to the west of the end of the earth, and I saw a burning fire which ran without resting and paused not from its course day and night, and ran regularly. And I asked, saying, What is this which rests not? Then Raguel, one of the holy angels who was with me, answered and said unto me, The course of fire which thou hast seen, the fire in the west, which persecutes all the luminaries of heaven. And from thence I went to another place of the earth, and he showed me a mountain range of fire which burnt day and night. I went beyond it and saw 7 magnificent mountains, all differing, each from the other, and the stones thereof were magnificent and beautiful, beautiful as a whole of glorious appearance and fair exterior. 3 towards the east, one founded on the other, and 3 towards the south, and one upon the other, and deep rough ravines, and one of which joined with any other. And the 7th mountain was in the midst of these, and it excelled them in height, resembling the seat of a throne. And fragrant trees encircled the throne, and amongst them was a tree such as I had never yet smelt. Neither was any amongst them, nor was the others like it. It had a fragrance beyond all fragrance, and its leaves and blooms and wood withered not forever, and its fruit is beautiful. Its fruit resembles the dates of a palm. And I said, how beautiful is this tree, and fragrant, and its leaves are fair, its blooms very delightful in appearance. Then answered Michael, one of the holy and honored angels who was with me and was their leader. He said unto me, Enoch, why dost thou ask me regarding the fragrance of the tree, and why dost thou wish to learn the truth? I answered him, saying, I wish to know about everything, but especially about this tree. And he answered, saying, this high mountain which you have seen, whose summit is like the throne of God, is his throne, where the Holy Great One, the Lord of glory, the eternal King, will sit when he shall come down to visit the earth with goodness. And as for this, shall take vengeance on all and bring everything to consummation forever. And it shall then be given to the righteous and holy. Its fruit shall be for food to the elect. It shall be transplanted into the holy place of the temple of the Lord, eternal King. Then they shall rejoice with joy and be glad, and into the holy place they shall enter, and its fragrance shall be in their bones. And they shall live a long life on earth, such as thy fathers lived. And their days shall no sorrow or plague or torment or calamity touch them. Then I bless the glory of God, the eternal King, who hath prepared such things for the righteous, and hath created them and promised to give them. And think about this too. When it said to live like the glory of the length of days like their fathers have lived, it kind of makes me wonder, like when, men were living like 900 years and shit, like, where are we under the curse of them the same way then? Or, like what changed, to give us only 120 years as opposed to, 1,000 years on the earth or whatever. I know that it says my spirit shall not abide in man, forever or whatever, but still, here, I'm gonna switch gears here. But it's almost like, you can see in that in each and every like variation of these creation myths, revelation, epics, into the world type of epics. Because see, the end is the beginning is the end, if that makes sense. So it's like, this is why I believe, like when it talks about the star falling from heaven and stuff like that, like at the end, it's like, that's like also the beginning. It's like a loop, you know. It also talks about in Revelations, a third of the stars were flung from the heavens, right? And then think about, in the beginning, right? The third of the angels rebelling, being thrown down, It's almost like we Because time is an illusion. So it's like we're on repeat. So we think it's like the end of the world, but it's also the beginning. At the end, Genesis and Revelation go right together, if that makes sense. Revelation follows Genesis. You could repeat them one after the other. Genesis to Revelation, Revelation to Genesis, Genesis to Revelation, right? And there's a lot of different like mythologies and different, different epics basically that kind of like, have similar thoughts. And I was thinking about Ragnarok, right? Same thing. It's like, yeah, there's this destruction, but after it's over, right, there'll be this perfect world created and da da da. Revelation the same way. We're back in the Garden of Eden. Right? All the tears will be wiped away, right? No more suffering, right? Back in the Garden of Eden, basically. We were perfect in the Garden of Eden. So it's like we're back to, where we started. It's like we hear like in the Bible, it's like, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. There's nothing new under the sun, right? Like that's why knowledge is sorrow. It's like because you understand, and this is what I was talking about with these memes, these symbols, and it has that idea embodied in that symbolism, right? And when it's impressed upon the subconscious, it activates something within you. It's like that, your DNA, you're wrapped around your ancestors are literally like wrapped around you, So that memory, that genetic memory from the beginning, to now, you were there. You were there as your great, 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 great granddad or grandmother, right? You were there. In spirit, you were there. And that's why we see, like, and don't tell me you don't see it, like, especially, like, people talk about, like, with celebrities and shit like that, like, how they're clones and, they'll come from different people or they get repeated throughout time. It's like, yeah, they probably do. Same spirit entering again and again. We're in a closed system. Where else are you going to go? We bound ourselves to this too, like with the whole serpent thing. If the serpent's bound, and we know it is, and we mixed our seed with the serpent, then we're bound as well. Until and maybe that's why the whole 10,000 years thing, even takes place, because it's like, is that how long it takes for us to work the serpent out of our spirit again? Till it's like out of us, until we overcome that. We overcome that mimetic mind, that mind virus of division, of lust, of darkness, of evil. We didn't need to know the knowledge of good and evil. God already did. And he gave us only good. And we're like, yo, we want to know what evil is. Like how fucking stupid was that? Here you go. When people say, well, why would a loving God send people to hell? And it's like, If you truly think about it, God didn't do nothing to you. You did it to yourself. He just allowed you to, you know? Because hell, and what people describe as hell is like the suffocation of hell, the fire of hell. Like God is always like, it's living waters, right? So there's no water. The breath of God, there's no breath, there's no air, right? Like it's everything, like it's minus all of God's presence. That's all hell is, and it's torment because it has no goodness, it has no God in it. You know, through your life, you elected to bind yourself. You were in covenant with all these demonic spirits and demonic entities. That's what you chose. Where attention goes, energy flows. That's what you gave your energy, your reverence, your focus in your life to. That's what you chose. He didn't punish you at all. You punished yourself. You know, it says we will judge the angels, you know? And I wonder why. Because we see how fucked we were. Like, damn, you guys tricked the shit out of us. You know? Like they were so much more advanced than us. They seen it, you know, they seen us coming a mile away. You know. We thought all their magic science was like for our benefit. And it's like we would have figured it out on our own anyways. And that's what God was saying. It was like, you know, he's like, the angels only knew the worthless mysteries that men was working up to already. You know, y'all didn't even know the fullness of my plan. You know, so he let them have free will as well. They chose their fate as well. They chose something different as well. And that's why they're bound in chains. That's why they're in torture. And if you yoke yourself with that, you go with that because that's what you elect to do. You know, nobody's forcing it upon you at all. And like I said, there are these inherent laws to creation, and they operate whether we are aware of them or whether we acknowledge them or not. So. And that's why, in essence, we live in a prison planet. Right? This closed system. It's like we're serving time for the deeds that we did, at the very beginning. You know, and God lets nothing go to waste, so it's working out for humanity's good, not so much for the angels that did it to us. You know, they fucked themselves by doing it because they already knew, full well what they were doing to us, full well that what they were disobeying, what they were breaking. They had full awareness of, their deeds. We didn't. We were children, when they took advantage of us. And that's why he says, to harm one of these little ones, it'd be better to have a millstone hung around your neck and be thrown into the depths of the sea. And that's exactly what's happened to them, right? They're in the depths of Sheol, and they can't look up because of their shame, because they have that millstone hung around their neck, right? See, things take on a whole different meaning when you, really start to wrap your head around the big picture of what's going on here. It doesn't seem so, God doesn't seem like such a bad guy anymore. It's like, shit. I mean, really? If he was like us, just be real, I would have abandoned us. I'd have been like, man, fuck y'all. You know what I mean? You guys want to do this? Then all right, I'm done with you. But, because he's patient and all of this, he's like, damn, it's like his kids made a piss poor decision, and he brought wrath down on who took advantage of his children, like a good dad would, right? And then he's letting his kids learn the lesson the hard way. But, we can always come back home, And I think that's the moral of the story. So I am going to wrap this one up for tonight. I'm going to wrap this one up. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys for joining me. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate all of you. If you like the content, you like what I'm doing, and you want to support the channel, you can donate by going to paypal.me / the Best Damn Podcast, Cash App, cash.app / the little money sign, Best Damn Podcast, Facebook Messenger Pay, it's facebook.com, John Keane, Best Damn Podcast, or joining me over on Patreon, patreon.com, Best Damn Podcast Officials, or joining me on Locals on Rumble. And please make sure to go to Rumble and subscribe, rumble.com, user Best Damn Podcast, rumble.com, Best Damn Podcast, rumble.com, Best Damn Podcast. YouTube, Best Damn Podcast Official, Best Damn Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, Best Damn Podcast, and Twitter, The Real Best Damn. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Share this, help me to get it out there the way other people can find me. And I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Remember, Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. God bless you guys. Peace.